Welcome. It is October 24th, about 7:30 p.m. Pacific time, which means we're about 6.5 hours after the close of the market. Uh, so this is the recording for the aftermarket session. Since I was on a plane for most of the day and traveling, I didn't really get a chance to look at the markets. So this is really my first chance to look at what happened during or actually after we close today. So let's go ahead and we'll start with our actually, you know what, I'm going to start with my dollar index today. I want to take a broader approach. So my dollars are consolidating, moving in a nice flat line over here. So nothing really to say too much about the dollar. Nothing really exciting happening over there. Let's take a quick look at bonds. Bonds continued to move upwards, so it's bouncing up. It looks like it's pulling back, and we've exceeded the EMA 8 at this point. We're not too far from the EMA 20, so I wouldn't be too surprised if we reach that, and then we'll see from there. But my feeling is that that trend is going to hold. But as long as we're moving upwards, that's pressure off of the overall stock markets. So we should see a nice healthy pop up in the major indices as well. And we did for sure get that in the S&P. We closed a little bit higher than where we opened. We went through a pretty large range today, but the good news here is that low is completely above the MA200. We like to see that. So that's great news for the MA200. But of course, you can see right here that volume bar is below the average. It's a smaller volume bar. So we did it on light volume. So I'm not going to get too excited about this. This isn't entirely unexpected because we have a lot of big earnings coming out after the market. So by this time, they're probably already out or before the market opens tomorrow morning. So I know for sure that Google and Microsoft already reported. Okay, and we can see that we got a surprise on the earnings and we got a surprise on the revenue, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go up. Sometimes they say something in the investor call or they have forward projections that don't quite meet investor expectations, and then it could go down. So we'll take a look at that in just a moment. Let's take a peek at Microsoft first. And again, we surprised to upside quite a bit on the earnings and a decent amount on the revenue as well. So let's take a look. Because again, it doesn't necessarily mean that Microsoft is going to pop upwards. So let's see what happened in the aftermarket and whether or not it received a positive or negative response. So let's go ahead to our intraday charts, so our day trading charts. And I'll select this one and let's take a look at what happened with Google. Oh, so even though we got the surprise earnings, 6.5% better earnings and 1% better on the revenue, they must have said something that the investors didn't like, and this tanked and held at this low right here. So without digging into the reports or looking for headline news, I can only guess that there is maybe forward-looking statements that didn't look so great, or forward-looking projections, or something with the revenue didn't line up. Something in the business didn't match expectations. So, for example, we saw this happen with Disney. Disney lost money on its streaming services, but it did really well on its theme parks. And overall, they beat in the surprise earnings. I'm talking about the last round of earnings, not this one. The last round of earnings, they beat in theme parks, they lost in streaming, but overall, their earnings beat and their revenue beat. But that doesn't necessarily mean people took that as good news, because if you are only making money in one of your business sectors, that's not necessarily healthy for the company. So either something similar to that happened in Google, so maybe they did really well in search, but they did poorly in other forms of advertising or something like that, or they didn't have very good forward projecting earnings, or the CEO said something really weird on the call. Okay, so so Google way down. That's definitely going to be a drag on the markets tomorrow when we open. We'll see in the pre-market how that affects the ES because Google is quite a large company. Let's see what it is in terms of the S&P 500 right now. And just looks like it's going to take a moment to load. Try refreshing it. I apologize. I'm on the hotel Wi-Fi, so it's not the best. I'm going to let that run in the background, and let's take a look at Microsoft. Okay, so nothing could be more opposite than what happened with Google. So both companies beat on earnings and beat on revenue, and both companies surprised by quite a bit, although Microsoft did surprise more in both instances. But Google is way down in the aftermarket, and Microsoft is way up in the aftermarket. So a lot really depends on those forward projections. Microsoft is up, so maybe they balance each other. Maybe we're kind of flat opening tomorrow. But of course, these weren't the only two companies reporting, and on net did the companies and weighted by their market cap, were they beating earnings surprises? Did they jump after their earnings announcements, or did they fall after their earnings announcements? And of course, we have a slew of companies also reporting tomorrow morning. So tomorrow is going to be very interesting to watch at the open, and we're going to have to be very careful when we're day trading because so many stocks could be related, and we want to see really how things open up. So either we're going to catch those breakouts right off the bat and see all that volatility, or we're going to wait for half an hour to an hour for everything to settle down and catch trends rather than volatile jumps. Just depends what type of day trader you are. So let's see if that, nope, still hasn't loaded up. Let me try to get at it a different way. Visualize. There we go. So we look at here over at the S&P 500. Look how big Google is. That is huge. And look how big Microsoft is. So if I take this as roughly a quarter, okay, Google and Microsoft by themselves already occupy almost a quarter of the S&P 500. So the fact that one is significantly down and the other one is significantly up, on net, that's sort of on balance. And then what are the other really big stocks or all the stocks? Uh, uh, how are they going to pop up or pop down after their earnings announcements tomorrow morning, or if they already announced on net? How does that look? That's really how we're going to look at the futures tomorrow morning. Okay. So in any case, the SPY is looking good. It has a low completely above that MA 200. So maybe we've averted this possibility of coming down to this blue line, at least in this current leg. We'll see if we have enough steam to get above that MA 150 and EMA 20, which are pretty much at the same level. And then if we wave up and we touch that MA 50 again, unfortunately at that point, we will still have made a lower high from here, or at the very least, the same high. So that's not necessarily very strong for the market overall. It may very well mean that we need another leg down to this MA or to this blue line right here before bouncing and starting the new uptrend. Or this could be it. This could be it. If we can break through that MA50, this would be we would be a lot more comfortable that this would be it, and we could possibly at least challenge these new highs. But for now, all we're really looking is on shorter term. Can we get another day with that low above that MA 150? And then can we go and challenge the EMA 20 and MA 50? So far, things are looking better than they are worse. And so far, based on the earnings that we've had right now, we're sort of neutral. And so we're going to keep our viewpoint that we're going to be mildly optimistic that we're moving up from here. QQQ bounced off of that blue line, went into its EMA 8. So again, we are mildly optimistic that we can move upwards. But really, this QQQ is very slightly downward sloping, and it's very much looking like it's consolidating in this channel right here. So if we can break above, then we're going to need to get above that MA50 and above this high right here before we start to feel a lot more rosy about the QQQ. Let's look at the Dow Jones. Dow Jones up also, but not even close to its EMA 8, so relatively weaker than the S&P 500 and QQQ. And then let's look at our small caps. Small caps also moved upwards, but again, not that strong, not even into the EMA 8. And it just really, yeah, it's great that we moved up, but we really need to see more follow through before we can feel good about what's going on in the small caps. Let's take a look at where money went in terms of sectors today. Okay, so more bonds. Definitely bonds seeing more love. And then that's interesting, utilities and real estate. So these two are highly interest rate sensitive sectors. So I guess it's not super surprising that with bond prices up, that means yields down. And so on a relative basis, utilities and real estate might look a little bit more attractive, and therefore money going into utilities and real estate as well. Looks like we've got some materials and then communications, probably in anticipation of those Google and Microsoft and others. Meta. When is Meta reporting? It's reporting tomorrow after the market. So some institutions out there anticipating good news in the communication sector. So they might know something that we don't know. XLY is pretty strong up there too. So these are pretty bullish sectors to be in. So, or I should say, pretty speculative sectors to be in. So it looks like there is some smart money kind of betting that earnings are going to go well. Let's see how it looks on a 1 week basis. XLP in communications and U. Okay, so these two are consistent right here. Interesting that XLP is up here. Let's see how they did just today. XLP. Oops. Middle of the road. Okay. So maybe some strength in XLP, but we're really, these were the stars today. And looks like if we're going to go risk on, which we are only very mildly optimistic about, XLC could be a good place to look. And do I have semiconductors in here? I don't know why I don't have semiconductors in here. That's interesting. We used to have semiconductors in here. We did all at least 2 weeks ago, probably last week as well. But let's correct that. I don't know why I don't have semiconductors here. So let's take a look on so semiconductor is very strong also in line with XLC today. And then on a 1 week basis, still reasonably strong. Um, Not as strong as XLC, but I guess a little bit more middle of the road right here. But it's still on the in the upper half. So it looks like a little bit of risk on at the moment, and that matches our viewpoint where we are just very mindly optimistic that at the very least we should be able to approach that MA 150 and EMA 20 level. So right now, I would be interested in XLE. XLE pulled back quite significantly. Okay, so if you had done right here at the MA50, you had done the long, the strongest, short, the weakest, you're probably doing pretty well on that short, the weakest one. And so you would consider taking off the long on the stronger one. Right now, there's no particular reason to believe we're going to immediately bounce upwards. So maybe a little bit more downside to go. We are out that -1 Kelter channel, so it wouldn't be too surprising. And actually, we are at that EMA 100 as well. So there's a reasonable chance. But overall, until we see less conflict in the world, we will expect energies to remain bid up. So this should just be a temporary downward movement. And then this is actually a reasonable place for it to bounce, actually, now that I look at it more carefully. We have that -1 Keltner channel, we have that EMA 100 right here, and we have horizontal support right here, the area of consolidation. So I wouldn't take off that long, that strong long, and I might consider flattening out or rebalancing my long and my short position. What does that mean? If I had put, if these, if the long had been the same delta as the short, and I had put $1,000 or the same amount of money in each one, well, this one that went short made some money here, and this one that went long was either flat or lost a little bit of money. So now, this one, let's just say the long lost $100 and the short gained $300. Now my positions are no longer balanced. Right? I can stand to lose uh, a more. My dollar-wise position in the short is now higher than my long. And not only that, my deltas are now different. So I want to re-weight. And what that probably means is either I'm going to buy more of the long, which I probably don't want to do. I don't want to add more cash into a position, especially a losing position. So what I would want to do is I would take some profits off the table on the short. So when I take my delta multiplied by the value of my long, so let's just say the delta was now 0.4, and he said that it had lost $100, so it was worth $900 right now. 0.4 times 900 would be 360. So now I want my delta on my short multiplied by whatever position that I keep. I also want that to be very close to 360. So what that probably means is if I had 1,300 and $1,300 is the current value of my shorts, and just say my delta is now at 0.6. 0.6 times what equals 360? Well, that would be 600. So I would only want $600 left over here, which means I would sell $700 worth of my short, and then I would have when I take 0.6 times 600, I got 360, and when I take 0.4 times 900, I got 360, and that way I'm once again neutral balanced, because I am not entirely sure that we're going to bounce from this point, and I still want to be positioned to take advantage in case it moves down or if it moves up.
So I'm going to rebalance my position. Hopefully that made sense to you. I wasn't prepared for this example, so I don't have a way of writing, and I don't have my draw pad either. So otherwise I would have written it down for you. So if that was confusing, if you weren't able to follow, go ahead and rewind and just rewatch that section again and do that 2, 3, 4 times, as many times as you need to in order to understand what I just said there. Basically, on a delta basis, you want to have the on a delta weighted basis, you want to be invested the same amount to the long side as you are to the short side. And now that you have profits to the short side, you're no longer delta weighted neutral any longer. Okay. All right. So hopefully you understood all that. You got a clear picture. If not, go back and rewind and listen to it again. And we will look forward to seeing how the market opens tomorrow.